Good morning, all, and welcome. It gives me great pleasure to introduce this morning's keynote speaker. He is a national leader on issues related to STEM education. Before entering the education arena, he spent 15 years in the hospitality business, developing multi-million-dollar restaurant designs and executing a wide variety of business plans. Prior to that, he worked on the Epcot project with the Disney Corporation. He has led middle and high school transformation policy at the Ohio Department of Education, served as Chief of Staff for the Cincinnati Public Schools, and is currently the Director of STEM Innovation Networks at Battelle. Please join me in welcoming David L. Burns.
Good morning. So Cynthia says, you want to come to Pittsburgh in the middle of February? And I said, sure, because I was smoking crack. I want to tell you a little bit about who I am, who I work for, and why we are here. I work for a place called Battelle Memorial Institute. It's located in Columbus, Ohio, and it is established through the will of Gordon Battelle, which I'll get into a little bit later. But my day-to-day job is working with something called the Ohio STEM Learning Network and the Tennessee STEM Innovation Network, and supporting Margaret Ishida with the STEM X Network. All of this is supported by Battelle Memorial Institute, this place in Columbus. Why are we in this business? And why does it matter to us? I'll talk about that today, but really is why does it matter to you is the most important part here. The picture on the wall is of Gordon Battelle. He lived for 40 years. Gordon actually started the institute, which became Battelle Memorial Institute, and he did it through the power of a will. The irony is, Gordon died of an appendectomy. The same surgery that Battelle, through its own scientific research, improved upon and made it a non-life-threatening disease is the one that got him in 1940. Gordon had some foresight. He was the son of an industrialist, meaning he had some cash. What to do with that cash? He invested in this thing called the Battelle Memorial Institute that was dedicated to scientific research and discovery for the purpose of industry, but really to uplift the common man. And I want you to remember that specific line, uplift the common man, meaning that they were going to focus on those things that really made a difference, which really meant that they had to focus on the complex problems of our world. Why would somebody do this he actually wrote the will in 1921. Why would he do it? See if this works. Maybe not. There we go. He was living in a really interesting time. We always tend to believe that right now is the most cutting edge piece of technology in the world, but if you really took a step back into Gordon's world, 1903 was the first flight. 1909, a guy named Marconi won the Nobel Prize for the first wireless transmission. Something around 1915 was the transcontinental phone call, and of course, Einstein published the theory of relativity in 1970. A lot of things were happening at the time, life-changing things. That's when Gordon decided to put together his will to establish the Battelle Institute, which happened to be built in 1929. I have to do this for all the women who work at Battelle. We give Gordon all the credit. He dedicated $1.2 million to the founding of this institute. In today's dollars, that's about $15 million. His mother died 2 years later, and she dedicated $4 million. In today's dollars, $52 million to this institute. Why we like to talk about Gordon Battelle? Annie Battelle made this happen. She was the driving force behind it. Within the will, these are the exact words: for the purpose of education, for the encouragement of creative research, and the making of discovery and inventions. Come on. Over the years, Battelle's been able to take these inventions and really change the world. Invented things like cruise control, invented things like the barcode, invented things like compact disc, which is the same technology that is being utilized today in all your MP3 players. Invented things like robots that can perform heart surgeries isolated away from distant countries. I think the most interesting thing that we ever invented was the Pringles can. Seriously, 98,421 potato chips in a 2-inch single serving size. That's genius. Today, we are one of the largest corporations. We are the largest independent research and development company. We do lab management. We focus on national security, national health, national environment. We do about $6.5 billion every year. We have 22,000 employees globally. We manage the 8 national labs on behalf of the Department of Energy, Department of Homeland Security, and in the United Kingdom. Why is this important to you? We have 22,000 employees, a lot of which have PhDs in science, technology, engineering, and math. What I want you to take away from today, and this gets to Cynthia's point about STEM literacy, STEM fluency, is of those 22,000 employees, a lot of them don't have PhDs in science, technology, engineering, and math. But do we want them not to be STEM fluent? Do we want the accountants, the lawyers, the maintenance, all folks to not have the same kind of education that brings critical problem solving to the forefront? The answer is Battelle would say no. We understand why everybody focuses on these particular disciplines. There are just nothing but these national reports that tell us all the bad things that happen. You know, every year, Washington pushes something out that says it's too late, the storm is rising. I'll go to the gathering above the rising storm. There's this kind of this fear and loathing that is occurring in our world. That these things, if we don't get more scientists, technologists, engineers, and math, the world is going to end. And we're going to end with it. We would like to put a little bit a different view of what STEM is. All these words, all these letters particularly, work in combination. Science, technology, engineering, and math. Never, ever in isolation. This isn't about just more AP biology. This isn't about just more math. How do you get kids to think utilizing science, technology, engineering, and math to problem solve? This forces us, because STEM is the worst acronym that was ever made. I spent 6 years of my career trying to tell people that I'm not doing stem cell research, just so you know. But you force letters in. STEAM, you have to have the arts. Another E, STEAM, for entrepreneurship. Go ahead. Double M for medicine. Sometimes you put a little power to the 2 sign, so it's STEM forever. This is my favorite, STEMPHY. I don't know how many of you are old enough to remember Our Gang comedy, but Darla, buckwheat, alfalfa, STEMPHY. Anyways, it's a Wheel of Fortune approach. Buy a vow, and you're included, and you're a part of it. But let's look at really what the acronym is supposed to mean, and it means to us at Battelle. What is science? Is it more AP biology? Is it more AP chemistry? Is it physics? Yes, sorta, not really. It's really about being able to think scientifically. It's really able to know that the truth for right now is the truth for now. And truth might be different 5 minutes from now. It is the reason that a biology book is out of date 2 seconds after it's published. Go to the next. We do not think of engineering as a thing or a noun. We do not want the world to be all engineers. I have a brother that's an engineer. He has friends. We never invite them to cocktail parties. There is a reason for this. They are fascinating people, but they need to be kept in isolation. You do not want to circulate these folks. Engineering is really about taking a complex problem and breaking it down into solvable problems. And understanding that if you start here, you may not know where you end up. What I find fascinating in education, and as superintendent told me I was an educator for about a minute, but I was an educator for about a minute. We always have to get the right answer. We just focus on getting things right all the time. All the engineers, scientists, and mathematicians at Battelle, they miss it 99 out of 100 times. Every experiment almost always goes wrong. And it's okay, because that's life. You don't always get the right answer. You work on the problem. Please. Technology, and I will say this as an educator, we handle technology worse than any other business in the world. We just want to make it a thing instead of what it is, which is a tool. It's just a tool. A pencil is a piece of technology. I swear to God, I walked in as an administrator when I was with Cincinnati Public Schools, and walked in with a principal and a teacher who was so proud because they were doing PowerPoint presentations with a 3rd grade class. I had a 3rd grader or an 8-year-old at home, and I was trying to figure out when would they ever use PowerPoint. Yeah. Play date at 3 o'clock. Come on over. I'm going to do mud pies. I got charts. Technology is just a tool to get us to where we need. Do we need to know what the right tools are? Yes. And in the earlier remarks, they were talking about unlearning. How many of you have switched from a Mac? Or from an Apple to, or excuse me, from a PC to a Mac? You have to unlearn to learn. How many of you switched from LinkedIn to Facebook to whatever? Always a relearning process. Technology is about adaptability, the ability to take a new product, test it, and move forward with it. It is not teaching a thing called technology. Please. Mathematics. This is ironic. I'm an English major, so that meant I avoided mathematics for my entire life. Mathematics is a language. It's not an isolated piece. It's how we create scale. What's big? What's small? What's ratio? How do we quantify those things that we can't quite understand? We use mathematics to do that. So it's the knowledge of mathematics, to have the common language to talk about these really complex problems. Unfortunately, STEM, always in combination, never in isolation, is exactly the way we don't teach. We teach every day in isolation. We teach English over here, mathematics over there, science over there. We taught for a different era. These schools were designed around industrialism. This is not a secret to anybody in the room. but it was very much a production line utility. You come in here, you get a dose of English. You come in here, you get a dose of social studies. You come in here, you get a dose of mathematics. And somehow, when the kid goes home, this is all supposed to mix together, and they're supposed to understand the relationships between each other. We've used STEM, terrible picture, but it's actually a Trojan horse approach to school reform. The things you're going to get today force you to work with somebody else. They force you to break the barriers of school. They force you to do problem solving, critical thinking, inquiry-based education. They force you, as a teacher, to talk to the person next to you. It's a redesign of school. Critically important, if you want a different result, you have to do things differently. You cannot expect everybody to come here, find out the great ideas of STEM education, find out about inquiry-based education, find out about integrated approaches, and then go home and sit in your English room by yourself. It just won't work. I challenge principals, superintendents, rethink of how your school design is. Rethink of how you can get these folks together. Give the kids real problems to solve. There are business partners here. You have problems within your business. I've spent a lifetime in business. We always have problems. There's no shortage of them. Give them to some kids. Try to figure it out. Let them play. Let them participate. Why does it have to be real world? Because it has to matter to the kids. Why does the design have to have some kind of value to the children? You want them working on this project at midnight because it means something to them. You want to redesign your curriculum so the kids wake up proud of what they have to offer. This is new school design. This is what new schools need to look like. Kids utilizing the content knowledge, and please, please, I am not saying content isn't important. It's extremely important. But the utilization, the applied science is the most important thing. Not just having a strong background in science, not just having it in technology, engineering, or mathematics, but being able to apply them. Why is this important? Please. I should have changed this. The challenge is creating a STEM fluent society. Please. Because every day I walk past this portrait of this guy, and he had a vision that somebody has to really work on the complex problems. And money from his trust signs my paycheck, so it's really important. Why is it really, really important? I got 3 kids. They are entering a world that I can't even conceive. Think about the last 2 years. I don't care if you believe in global change, climate change or not, you know, some pretty funky things are happening. Financial markets are melting down and then being rebuilt. Is there not a person in this room who's worried about their 401k? Is there not a person in this room who's worried about health care for themselves and for their children? Issues I've never even had to think about, and they have to live with every day of their lives. And the complexity is just going to get deeper. And the speed of change is just going to get faster. So that was depressing. The point here is people in this room can actually make a difference. You reach out and you work with children every day of your lives. They don't know what's coming. You don't know what's coming. So the best way to handle that is prepare them to learn. STEM should just say thinking. We're trying to teach kids how to think and how to make good judgments. how to make ethical judgments, how to make democratic judgments, how to make judgments that allow them to grow as individuals. I am always taken aback when I work with teachers, and this will sound like a trite tribute, but it happens to be true. You guys work hard. You know, I have 3 kids. I don't want to sit in a room with 25 of them at one time. It is just unbelievably difficult. And kids change emotionally like every 30 seconds. I was a 9th grade teacher, and that's why I have great hair. I had 5 classes of 9th graders in English, and the hormones and the emotions, every day I was shaking by the end of it. You have a tremendous challenge in front of you, but you have a tremendous opportunity. You know that schools can do better, not about state tests, not about accountability, not about, oh, we're the college prep academy of whatever, but really about teaching kids how to think and be prepared for life. We talk about college and career ready. I want my kids to be life ready. I want them to be able to handle anything that comes down the path. And you, as educators, you, as business people, can help me get my kids there. Thank you very much. You have questions? Covered a lot of not stuff, but didn't know if people wanted to throw out questions regarding anything. It wasn't that bad. Sure. No, it's question is state tests. Personal opinion, they suck. But yes, it is. I hope we have Department of Education. I was one, so I can talk about this. We talk to people and tell them to integrate their curriculum, and then we test them in specific content areas. So we're talking out of both sides of our mouths. That's the first truth of it. Our high-performing STEM schools, what I have found, have been able to use this problem-based, inquiry-based to raise the level of their test scores. They do 2 things, which I think it's too much to ask, and I'm not saying every school should do this. They do two things. They do performance-based assessments, and they do end-of-course exams. Why do they do that? Because they are really concerned that through the performance-based assessment, only everybody else is going to say that they're not really teaching and learning. That's the truth of it. So they focus on the content area, and I'll give you one example of one school. They don't have grades 9, 10, 11, and 12 in high school. They have year 1, year 2, year 3, and year 4. And they focus on something called mastery, which you only get an A or you don't get out of it. Time is trying to take it out of it. They focus year 1 and year 2 on the content, get the tests out of the way, really. And they honestly use the test as kind of a gatekeeper to allow them to get to the college courses, the interdisciplinary. So I am speaking out of both sides of my mouth. The first 2 years there is pretty much a drill and kill, get past the test. The second 2 years, they get to do the fun stuff. That's how we are dealing with it. It's a huge obstacle in Ohio. It's a huge obstacle in Tennessee. Those 2 states I specifically know. The test itself isn't, because the tests aren't really that hard. Now, everybody's talking about end-of-course exams. That's a whole different game. And teachers are scared to death of that. And they should be. It's taking the bar from here, and there's no ladder in between.
You mentioned that science education, or STEM, was a, I'm not sure if you use the word, I always use it as a backdoor to educational reform. And I appreciate those comments, because ASSET was founded by a bunch of people who believe that. And and we got involved in science education because no one was paying attention to it 25 years ago. And they didn't care if you came in and did anything, they were happy. I'm wondering if you found some incentives or attractions that help schools move from an industrial model to a more inquiry or open integrated model of education that's been effective.
And thank you. I'm using Ohio and Tennessee as the examples because that's all I know, and there are better examples of that. When this came, the opportunity, I'll tell you a little story, the opportunity was driven by the business community in the state of Ohio to create STEM schools. I was at the Department of Education, and what they really wanted to do was create 10 STEM schools for the best and brightest. They really just wanted these super academies for the best and the brightest. And luckily, we had a visionary superintendent at the time, and I happened to be in the room, and it was like, well, what the hell are you doing? You know, the best and brightest don't really need our help. They're fine. The problem with the best and brightest, they're all going to North Carolina to work. So shouldn't we do something differently that impacts all boats to help them rise? And ours, and this was the fight with the state superintendent, I tried to keep it out of the State Department of Education because we couldn't do that. Creativity and innovation just wasn't in our bailiwick. And I was the one working there, and I was saying that. We pushed the money outside. So we got money, state funding, and we got some Gates funding. But we pushed the money outside, and we did it on an incentive-based, you do it differently. And we ended up with STEM schools in Cincinnati, Columbus, Dayton, mostly urban areas. Why is STEM always in urban areas? Is because that's where all your STEM assets are. Mostly your post-secondary institutions there, your biggest businesses are there. But the good thing is your most at-risk and at-need kids are there too. So the answer to your question is, through state policy in Ohio and Tennessee, we were able to push funding out to the local region, and we were able to give them cover for about 3 or 4 years. If you've ever started a school, you need to get 4 years. Why? You need to have a graduating class so people like the school. Then you can't take it away. Try to take away a school that's been around for 4 years, and you have parents and community that won't let it happen. So we were able to do that on an incentive basis. The state top-down piece of this was create the rubric of what you wanted to see. What was innovation in your mind? For Ohio, it was you had to be inquiry-based, you had to have the 3 business partners there, you had to open the door for all kids. It could not be a exam-in kind of school. That's what I saw that helped. Here's another important part. We've done 10 STEM schools in Ohio. Did all of them work? Answer is no. 5 years later, 6 years later, are all of them perfection? No. What I would say is, are they better than what they replaced? Yes. Are some of them outstanding and I would take all of you through them tomorrow? Yes. Are some of them embarrassing and I wouldn't take you through? Yes. Again, in school reform movements, you're going to plant a few dead trees. It's just going to happen. Yes, sir.
What grade level do you think? You mentioned high school, right?
Yeah.
Bunches in second, third grade. We're not doing anything.
The question is high school, and we're not really doing anything in the elementary school level. I don't know why we all jumped onto high schools, and I think my instinct in this is Gates put out a bunch of money to create small schools, so we all went to small high schools, and I was a part of that in Cincinnati. I think I designed like 11 schools in 14 months. We always want and this is state policy as well, we want the school to start at the 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, and grow one on. Every principal that I've known wants to grow that school from 9th grade to 8th grade to 7th grade to 6th grade. They want them in sooner. So we do not, and this is STEM X, this is TSIN and OLSN, we do not have a good elementary strategy. And every principal I know wants the kids in better, sooner, faster. They want to get the kids in. It's a system design flaw on our part as well. I think we go to high schools because we think we can control them, which we can't, but that's all right.
Hey, David?
Yes,
You
ma'am.
might mention we had a middle school visit Metro, and they implemented the design from this.
We also, that's Margaret Ashita from STEMX. Metro is our crowning jewel school in Columbus and does some really creative and innovative things. They're trying to grow to the middle school. A lot of middle school people are coming to that school and taking the design principles and pulling them back. We also have one in Akron. As all of you know, this middle school thing is the vast wasteland of education. Yeah, I came from Cincinnati District. We spent 2 years taking everybody, making sure that everybody was a K-8 and then a high school. And now 6 years later, they're going back and making sure that everybody's a K-6, and then they're reestablishing middle schools. And I think this is what we do as districts when we're bored. We just keep trying to figure out we keep putting them over here at the high school. No, they're not quite high schoolers, and then we keep putting them over here. We got to figure this piece out. By the way, this is where, in Ohio, we're losing all of our kids in that transition from 8th to 9th grade. I mean, huge amounts of kids. You see little dropouts, it spikes between that 8th and 9th grade. And we tell the secrets inside rooms like this. A lot of kids get promoted from the 8th grade because they're too big for the desk. You know, we just got to get them somewhere else. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes.
I'm from the Norwin School Board. Now, who places education into a high school and throughout the school system? Don't you think, it seems to me, when I graduated high school, I went to college, the first 2 years was a rehash of high school.
Correct.
I mean, it looks like college has to be reformed, but if we're gonna place this in, do we not have to establish agreements with colleges, set up relationships with them that our kids can, you put in all this work, you're gonna reap the benefit, maybe a shorter college stay, that sort of thing.
I appreciate the comment. The comment is it just high school? Does it have to go into the post-secondary? Are you just rehashing what you've already done? To me, this is, you get exactly to what I hope is my point. This is Trojan horse reform. Any one of the STEM schools in Ohio and in Tennessee should be early colleges, even though they only have a 9th or a 10th grade. They have to have a partnership with a post-secondary institution to justify the 11th and 12th grade. I can say this for Ohio, I won't say it for Pennsylvania. We do our best to jam 3 years of curriculum into 4. Meaning high school, a lot of you are high achievers, you know what your senior year in high school looked like. You can lie to your parents, but you can't lie to yourself. You know, you were out of that school by 11 o'clock in the morning. There wasn't, besides government and econ, you had no reason to be there. I try to sell this to state policymakers as an economic development issue. If you want more STEM graduates, let's get them through the system better, faster, and cheaper. So when they acknowledge the P school there in New York City, it's a clever design, but it's a 6-year high school for a 2-year degree. I would challenge that we can do a 5-year high school and do a 2-year degree out of that for a lot of kids. What does that get you? Usually for your first-time college goers, if they graduate, they stay in your communities. We never really think about that. But a lot of these incentives, I'm not saying this is true for Pennsylvania, but a lot of these policies incentives encourage people to leave your state faster. So how can you, as a taxpayer, put the hook in, I'll pay for you to get this degree, but you got to stick around my state for a couple years anyways. I think that's smart policy, but your point is well taken. If you're redesigning high school, you have to do something at the end of it, A, to incentivize the kids. Again, I'm a parent of 3 kids. If you can make college education cheaper for me, I am in the game. Because I do not want my kids going to college and go shopping, which they're doing, but that's a different story. Yes, sir.
In this state, we seem to see a lot of kids at the high school level especially leaving your traditional setting for cyber school options, which on the face of that, it looks like it's really impedes the innovative approaches for what STEM is actually looking for. Does the establishment that you find in Ohio and Tennessee, the establishment of these STEM schools, does that seem to curb that problem? And how did you sell the plans to the state legislature?
Cyber as being, and to me, almost a threat to keeping your kids in the school. Most of our schools have embraced online learning and utilized the high-end, the MIT, the Stanford, the Udacity kind of course offerings. The incentive to keep them there is if you can offer it at the school and get them the high school degree better, faster, and cheaper, then they stick around. Policymakers are just confused as can be about blended learning, online learning, and so we have not hit that issue as well. I would say, you know, if you want the kid to have everything, and this is how we came up with the traditional high school design, you should do home ec, you should have phys ed, you should have help, you know, you do everything, and so then you can't do anything really well. In the new design, I think the technology offers the ability to offer more variety for those kids, and if you can keep it within the STEM setting, the internship piece, then you've got something. We can't figure it out because it's a really difficult problem. The other piece of this is nobody trusts the blended learning piece. Everybody thinks if it's done through online learning, then it must be less than. That's not true. It might be more than. But how do you embrace it and how do you keep it within? It's a threat to us. And policy, we just haven't been able to figure it out. This is a great day. You have an opportunity to have discussions. Somebody said at Battelle, it was actually a marketing consultant, who said, your logo should be, we're Battelle, we think things to death. And when you get a lot of smart people together, that can happen. You can overthink it and overdo it. It's kids, it's education. What you have today, I think, is an opportunity to think things to death and how would we do this differently. What's most important is how do you bring that back to your home? How do you bring that back to your community? We started in Ohio with one school. We've directly impacting about 17,000 kids right now. It's still small, and I honestly believe you should keep small and keep quality. When you start a high school and you start with 4 devoted teachers and a great instructional leader, of course everything is wonderful. But when you become a 9 through 12 school, you've now quadrupled the size of your staff. You've quadrupled the size of your administration, so you kind of go away from the core that actually established the school. That's a challenge. That's a concern as you grow. The state policymakers, the federal policymakers, they always want you to go to scale. You're going to see it's a best practice. You got to go to scale. You got to go to scale. I would say, no, you don't. You just have to be really, really good. And if you're really, really good, other people will take it and will scale it themselves. That's not really your responsibility. Your responsibility is to be the best that you can be. I appreciate having you. I don't appreciate that it's 12 degrees, but everything else has been wonderful. Thank you very much.